I've been SCITT director of Bromley Schools Collegiate for 12 years. I started on 3rd of June 2013. Um, Prior to that, I was involved in initial teacher training for about 10 years prior to that in various different schools as a school-based mentor, and then coordinating some CPD for early career teachers, etc. like that. So, as well as SCITT director of Bromley Schools Collegiate, I'm just starting my second year of my PhD at the University of Wolverhampton. Um, and today I'm going to sort of share where I am with my current doctoral research and give some context of why I want to look at mentoring capacity. So I'm going to focus on my doctoral research, and because running a school-centred ITT provider, I have the same challenges as anyone providing initial teacher training in England, Scotland, or internationally. Without sufficient capacity to host placements within schools for the practicum or the practical element of training, it is a system limiting factor. If I don't have enough placements, I don't have enough mentors with the personal capacity to mentor, that the whole system comes grinding to a halt. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the continuing professional learning development model, which we're developing here at the Collegiate. It's also a focus of part of work I've been doing on my master's, which I did a couple of years ago, University of East London. And I'm also looking at ways in which we can build capacity at a school level as well, utilising expertise within schools. So what is a SCITT? We are an accredited initial teacher training provider in England. We provide the recommendation for qualified teacher status, which is our professional license to be a teacher in England. Within England, you do not need a level 7 academic qualification to become a qualified teacher. We don't grant QTS. The only person that can grant qualified teacher status is the Secretary of State. A number of training provisions within England also integrate or have run alongside a level 7 academic qualification. So we buy in a PGCE, which is provided for us by Canterbury Christchurch. Within a SCITT, a school-centred ITT provider, the partnership of schools which form the governance body for the SCITT, they provide the practitioner expertise, which provides the training for the cohorts of trainee teachers which come through. Now, you'll notice in terms of the language I'm using, we focus on initial teacher training, not initial teacher education. So there is, it used to be a schism, but now it's a little bit sort of less dramatic, the difference between universities and SCITTs within the English context. Within SCITTs, we are looking at training people for a specific role, which is as a teacher. So we focus less on the academic education about teaching as a profession. So in terms of conceptualizing our internal structure, I started to think about this a couple of years ago before I started my PhD, and I started working on presenting on these topics at the IPDA conference, International Professional Development Association. So the way in which we've conceived is that each individual partnership school we are conceiving as a specialist type of professional learning community. It's a group of professionals who are working for one specific aim. Now, this specific aim in our case is the preparation and training of new teachers. Now, rather than focus on, so for example, a PSC or PLC looking at questioning, we're looking at professional formation. What we then have, because we have a stable partnership of schools within our SCITT, our school-centred ITT provider, we have conceived that each of the schools, and as you can see on the screen, we've got secondary school 1, 2, and 3, that forms a professional learning network, which has got a specialised function in the collaborative development of new teachers and the collaborative qualification of new teachers. So within our structure, we have head teachers, which form our governance board, which we call our consulting management board. So you can already see that distributed leadership across the structure. Below that, we have what we call senior mentors. In other places, they might be called professional coordinating mentors, PCMs. Within the Department for Education, which is for England, their ITT criteria, they refer to them as lead mentors, but it's a bit of a contested title within the um, within the sector. So we have links between our organisations, within our organisation, between the schools at head teacher, senior mentor level. We also have subject leaders for each of our secondary subjects. We also then have our mentors come together, and then supervising teachers are really any teachers which work with our trainee teachers who are not the mentor. So you can see we've got a very strongly sideways integrated professional learning network, and it enables us to have groups of highly experienced teachers which then become involved within initial teacher training, and then that provides capacity whereby if we've got somebody new into role, they can then be partnered up with a more experienced either senior mentor, subject leader, mentor, for example, to have somebody they can shadow, somebody that they can have as like a peer coach within the organisation. Oh, sorry, one back up. So why this study? Strong partnerships of schools enable us to sustain mentoring, both at a school level and at an individual level as well. How we develop personal capacity, we've got to look at things like the workload, the systems, the processes we ask mentors to do. Within our organisation, we have gone through a process that we reduce the weekly paperwork systems which the mentors need to engage with to an absolute bare minimum, so that when the mentor is meeting with a trainee, they're not acting as a technician for the program. We are looking at they are helping to pass on that tacit knowledge, that forensic practical wisdom of how to be an effective teacher, and then contextualizing the themes which we're doing that week, for example, within our central training or what's been run within the seminar program in the school. So already we're looking at reducing workload as much as possible so that we can focus the energy of the mentor on the actual mentoring rather than the processes which are hanging around that. If we can build individual capacity and we can utilize that capacity, so if we have if we have a mentor that doesn't have a trainee for that particular year, but they're an experienced mentor, what we're exploring and what I'm exploring through my PhD is how do we utilize the expertise from that expert mentor, that expert colleague, to support somebody who is perhaps a less confident or less experienced mentor. So we're already looking within our organization about how we can utilize that expertise. If we can build capacity at a school level, it will enable us to train more trainees through that school. It will also allow us at a PLN level to be able to maximize the variety of placements which we can utilize. And as I've already said, having enough placements available within schools is a system limiting factor for our initial teacher training. We have, with a change of government, we were told that one of the aspirations is to train 6,500 new teachers. That's now changing slightly, but even with the current number of trainees coming through the system, which is below the target recruitment, we are struggling to secure placements as a sector. So if we suddenly got to find another 6,500, which is possibly another 20% of placements on top of what we've got at the moment, we've got to develop capacity in order to fulfill that need for new teachers across our schools. So the title for my PhD, working title at the moment, is about building stronger partnerships within SCITTs and their placement school networks. Main research question is looking at what are the influencing factors which can strengthen mentoring capacity within this district leadership network that we've got. And then my secondary research questions, I'm looking at what are the features of this model? Because we're quite lucky. We've got our schools which have been working together, some of them since 1993. We've got generations of head teachers which sit on our governance body. Um, so what's this? What's the secret sauce? Why does this work? What are the features of this really stable, distributed leadership model within our professional learning network? Not only at head teacher level, but at senior mentor level, subject leader level. What's the secret sauce? Um, One of the other things we want to do is how can we develop an adaptive CPLD model? Because one of the things which really frustrated me when I was a mentor, if I'd been mentoring 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I will be expected to do exactly the same training in a transmission model as somebody who's brand new to this, and I will be repeating that training each year. So what we're experimenting with is a negotiated adaptive CPLD framework to recognize the expertise which our mentors have developed. And we're just developing a model for the year 2 model, which we're going to be developing in terms of negotiated professional growth project, which each of our mentors undertake. And then the final SRQ was around how can we develop additional roles where we can utilize this expertise for people who have got experience but don't have a training for that particular year, because there are vast untapped resource which schools have got. So my pilot study, which I undertook earlier in the year, was looking at data collection via some spider diagrams on 4 particular questions. And I wanted to play with the idea of, if I'm collecting information and data around influencing and inhibiting factors, if I do it as like a series of questions, for example, on a Microsoft form, or if I do it as part of recorded recorded interview, like on Zoom or Teams, you get a sequential response, and there isn't an opportunity for respondents to go back as their ideas are developing. So I wanted to play with non-sequential approaches to allow the respondents to review and develop their ideas across the 4 questions. So these were the 4 questions asked just part of my pilot study. Who is the team around them? So the mentor, the senior mentor that provides support for them. What factors impact on your capacity to mentor effectively? So we're looking at this very much in terms of the personal level. Then for the second 2 questions, we zoomed out and looked at it at a system level. So we depersonalized it to see if there was a difference in the responses. So what enables teachers to have capacity, and then what are the limiting factors which reduce capacity? So we've got 2 personalized and 2 depersonalized responses. So to give you an example, this is why I gave my team. So I met with 4 of my primary phase senior mentors and 4 of my secondary phase senior mentors. I gave them the 4 questions. I just wrote them up on a flip chart, gave them 4 bits of paper each, and they wrote the questions in the middle of the bit of paper. And then individually, they all did it in silence. It was a bit like giving them a test, but I don't know. What they then did was wrote down their ideas. And what was interesting to notice is that as they were developing, thinking about the school level, depersonalized, it then triggered off thoughts to do with a personalized. So it took, in terms of that data collection for the group, each one, it only took about 20 minutes to do. So for me and my team, it didn't impact too much on their broader time. What we then did was use Braun and Clark's thematic analysis approach, and I used that in terms of developing a conceptual model about the inhibiting and enabling factors. So for those people who are working with initial teacher training or the ECTs, the findings which came out from the thematic analysis were sort of as expected. The biggest impacting factor, which was the leadership culture, which is set by the leadership team within the school. Is there a culture of growth where mentoring is valued? In those schools where mentoring is valued, then the organisational resource, both formal, release time, and informal time, being able to call upon colleagues to provide additional support for them as a mentor if they needed to um, uh, seek further help for their trainee teacher, for example, on being a form tutor or working with a Senko. So that's a formal and informal uh, facilitated resource. And the next impacting factor that came up from there was about the breadth and scope of the role is recognised within the school. And particularly for senior mentors who may be on that associate SLT level, having a line manager which recognise the importance in terms of talent development and talent retention within the organisation, and also the external branding reputation of the school, that was really picked up by many of the respondents. And also the local team dynamics and capacity. If there was capacity and there was you can think very simply in terms of growth mindset, in terms of this is an investment in the next generation of teachers, we're training future colleagues. That was where it was felt that was one of the enabling factors which needs to be in place. So it's a lot of factors around culture within the school. So within the main study, which I'm just at the end of my first round of data collection at the moment, I have used a quite detailed set of questions, and we have got responses back from 7 of our placement mentors, 6 of our senior mentors, using Microsoft Forms, trying to get head teachers, director of education, CEOs, etc., to fill in a Microsoft form. It's like banging your head against a brick wall. The way in which I've successfully got some responses back from them is to actually pin them down and do it as a Zoom call, because it's a compartmentalized bit of time. So I'm interviewing 2 head teachers. I've got 2 directors of education of local MATs. I'm interviewing the CEO of another one of our MATs tomorrow to look at what they perceive as the enabling and inhibiting factors. And I'm going to correlate from these 3 stakeholder groups. So the placement mentor, the senior mentors, and the head teachers, to see what the commonalities and differences in perception about what is enabling successful mentoring to happen. So here's some examples of the questions which I'm asking the interviewees. I really want to dig into those 3 groups to find out what their understanding of an expert mentor, an effective mentor, because you might have an effective mentor which does not conceive themselves as being an expert mentor yet. What needs to be in place for mentors to have capacity, what inhibits. Interesting question when I was asked about what forms of CPLD would you benefit from in your role, because it was a sort of sideways thinking, and it was interesting the response I'm getting from head teachers and from like directors of education. They want to know more about how the central training is run, and to actually experience that central training themselves, so they get an understanding of how we're developing expertise, because they're working very much at a governance level, and they want to really understand, get under the hood, find out why things the work they do. And then particularly for the senior leaders, there was a couple of other questions I asked, is about how do they support at the moment the developing and mentoring expertise within teachers, so not just with initial teacher training, but broader. What do they see as the benefits for the schools engaging in initial teacher training? Now there has been some research over the last 5 to 10 years in this area about the benefits to schools from a school leadership point of view, but I wanted to really dig into what are the tacit benefits to schools of that. And also, what do they see the benefits for the senior mentor and the lead mentor, depending how they conceive it within their school? So being that role, how does that help them to develop their broader range of skills? Because several of our senior mentors are also CPD leads, some are induction tutors, they have a multitude of roles in that space around a professional learning and professional development. So as an aside, what I want to do is really dig into what are the benefits to the organisation. So the round 1 focus, the triangulate responses, these are the ones which I'm going to be looking at, particularly for those three focus groups. And then those which are specific to the senior leaders, so it's head teachers, directors of education, CEOs. And then looking into next year, I really want to dig into the distributed leadership models. And part of that is around developing this CPLD model for the coordinating mentors, the senior mentors. How do we take those really experienced, pivotal members of both our organisation and their schools in terms of how do we continue to develop them? So we're looking at launching what we're going to call the Year 2 programme, and it's how do we sustain a transformative effect of the CPLD that we want to do. Linking back to Eileen Kennedy's model, the expectation from the Department for Education is that mentor training is in a transmission mode. So we deliver training, you receive training. Eileen Kennedy's work highlights that this isn't the most effective. One of the things we're looking at is the transformative effect of these CPLD programs, which we do internally. But one of the things we also want to do is how do we sustain that over time? Because sustaining that transformative effect from CPLD is the way in which I believe that we are going to build personal capacity, because you need to believe yourself that you have the capacity to do the role, because this is one of 9 plates that you're spinning that particular week professionally. And one of the things we've really put in place this year for the adaptive CPLD model is the leadership of those professional discussions with those mentors lies with that senior mentor, that PCM within the school. So they are developing their own team. They're also developing their own leadership capacity, and they're also developing that distributed leadership within their schools. Because if you've got a really experienced mentor, you could perhaps, as part of their Year 2 project which they're undertaking, is to support a less experienced mentor or a supervising teacher to become a mentor. So we're looking at distributed leadership within distributed leadership models as well.